Good evening, I'm Deborah Alexander. Donna Hickens on maternity leave. Up front tonight, a former Jacksonville police officer is shot dead by his peers. That's after a standoff in an Arlington shopping center. No one was injured as the retired officer fired bullets randomly. Lori Aragon has the latest.
Investigators at this scene were called after the owner of this Arlington pawn shop, Thomas Tawes, began firing shots inside his store. Shortly after police arrived, he took his 9mm gun outside and started shooting.
And he had pointed the gun to himself, and apparently he tried to kill himself, and they thought that probably maybe he would shoot at somebody else, and they stopped him because he was pointing out, you know, to the crowd and to the police officers that were on hand.
A man came out of the pawn shop and walked back and forth and hollered at the police trying to harass him.
Police back up these eyewitness accounts.
He pointed the weapon towards the outside of the business in a threatening manner, and at that point the officers that were in the preliminary area outside the pawn shop began to fire and shot and killed the owner.
Police aren't exactly sure how many shots fired both inside and outside the business here, and witnesses' accounts vary.
Like firecrackers going
So
off.
it was that many times?
Well, you know, maybe 3, 4 shots, I guess, but it was just like pow, pow, pow. You know.
Well, I heard gunshots.
A lot?
About 8.
Tawes retired from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Department after about 15 years service, then managed this pawn shop.
One of the best people. He know how to treat people. I don't know what happened to him.
Was he a nervous person?
No, he wasn't. He was a good one.
Was something happening in his life or something?
I don't think so.
Luckily, no one else was injured in this busy strip mall, except the man that used to help keep the peace himself. Lori Aragon, the News on 12.
Several people captured the shooting on home video, but tell us their tapes were seized by police at the scene.
This is the weekend edition of the News on 12.
Circumstances surrounding a deadly shootout in this parking lot top our news this evening. Good evening, I'm Deborah Alexander. Donna Hicken is on maternity leave. The Duval County Medical Examiner says a retired Jacksonville police officer died from gunshot wounds to the chest. That officer was involved in a standoff with police yesterday. 42-year-old Thomas Tawes was shot and killed outside his Arlington pawn shop. Police say Tawes fired shots into his business and then pointed his weapon at officers. Witnesses say Tawes showed no signs of giving up peacefully. Today, Tawes' family says police acted properly. His brother-in-law told us they had a job to do and we are sorry for them. A Jacksonville cab driver hit by gunfire early this morning is fighting for his life tonight. Relatives of a man shot by police say police acted properly. That's from our 24-hour news check. Retired Jacksonville officer Thomas Tawes was shot and killed by police yesterday. Witnesses say he fired in his Arlington pawn shop and his gun at police. Tawes' brother-in-law told us today they had a job to do and we are sorry for them. Tawes has served as a Jacksonville officer for 15 years.
Funeral services will be held Thursday for a retired Jacksonville police officer shot by police this weekend during a standoff. 42-year-old Thomas Tawes was shot outside his Arlington pawn shop. Tawes was armed with a pistol and fired shots into his business before pointing his gun at police. The state attorney's office says from all indications the shooting appears to be justified. An official ruling could be made tomorrow. The investigation into the Saturday standoff also involves the confiscation of videotape pictures taken by 2 amateur photographers. Jacksonville police say the tapes are evidence. They seized pictures raise the issue of a gray area in the law. What are the rights of police and what rights do amateur photographers have? As Roger Weeder reports, there is no clear-cut answer.
These pictures were taken by our news photographer after the standoff ended and after a former officer was shot and killed. Bill Gim is one of 2 amateur photographers who taped the actual shooting. Minutes after the gunfire ended, Gim says police demanded his videotape. Were you kind of surprised when the officer asked for your video camera?
I was, yeah. I didn't know whether I had any right to, whether he was in his full extent of the law or what.
Jacksonville police say videotape is like any other evidence, and they have a right to gather evidence. The department's legal advisor says taking the tapes was a proper exercise of police accountability. The Sheriff Department's legal advisor could not provide a court decision or any law that gives police officers the right to confiscate any videotape that you may shoot. Some defense attorneys we spoke to say this is a very gray area, but add there's such a thing as private property.
The Fourth Amendment prohibits that, to take things from people without warrants.
Tom Fellis is one attorney who questions whether it can confiscate pictures taken by a private citizen.
Of course, you know, it's a question. Any citizen can voluntarily, you know, surrender anything they want to the police. But the question, I guess, is did they take it under the guise of the color of state law, you know, and saying, hey, you know, we're the police and we have the inherent power.
Did the officer explain the rationale why he wanted the videotape?
All he said was for evidence.
It's the kind of evidence police say they are entitled to have. This weekend, Jacksonville police used that power to get videotapes from 2 unsuspecting amateur photographers. Roger Weaver, the News on 12.
Now, the state attorney's office says the videotapes in question could be released tomorrow. The sheriff's department says when it comes to videotape, they have no policy and that a decision to confiscate tapes is made by officers in the field.
And tonight, police